It's time to check your money with America's money maven, Vicki Brackens. Vicki Brackens is the president of Brackens Financial Solutions Network, LLC, and a registered representative of LPL Financial, member SIPC. Vicki, we got two special guests in the building.
Yes, George, we do. We have two returning special guests, two individuals who promised to come back to fill us in on some important information in the future, and that is Mr. Timothy Penix and Melanie Littlejohn, who are part of the community outreach program that was put in place, like what is it now, almost a year and a half ago, concerning the Micron efforts here in Central New York. And I wanted to make sure that we brought them back on today to give us an update, because now the full document, the document that we have been waiting for now for months and months and months, as far as the community priorities is concerned, is ready. In fact, has been for the last couple of weeks. So Tim and Melanie, thank you very much for agreeing to come back and for actually living up to that word and making sure that you're here today. Okay, so this is my first question to you. There have been companies around the world who have done major things as far as, Silicon Valley blossomed up and all sorts of things happened down in Texas as far as the super collider and all of the things that happened there. And corporations have built facilities of magnitude, Amazon, all over the world. And I have never heard before of any corporation actually taking time to spend and find out what the community wanted to any depth, as we have just lived through here with what's happening with the community priorities process with Micron. Why did it come about this way? What is this really about? What have you learned? And why did this happen this way for this type of effort?
Well,
who's going to volunteer?
I'll lead off with one question that is still ongoing, is what have we learned? Because we are learning a lot throughout this process. But the actual effort, and when I say that, the ideation of the community engagement committee, but more or less a fund, which is, we'll talk about these portions, really started when we discovered as a country that we needed to reshore many very, very important economic and technology for the security of the country. So it was an effort to reshore the semiconductor industry. And as a result, they established the CHIPS Act, which was designed to reshore these companies to ensure of our interest in this technology. Micron, along with the state of New York, in this process, submitted an application that really brought together this idea of an impact and an engagement with the community. And what I mean is, this impact that they planned and understood that's going to be significant in that application to the government, they stated that they would commit to this investment fund. But this fund would be at least steered by a priorities document that they would engage the community in developing. So that's how the whole idea came about. That's how the committee came about, in that in this application to the government, they committed to this. So you haven't seen this, because in this last year, as we've been learning, that there are others that have been reshored and are in the process of building. Some are a little further ahead than we are, Intel, NVIDIA, and all throughout the country, but we're the only one that has an effort like the Community Engagement Committee that's providing a document that will help steer a fund to establish equity and access based on this impact of Micron. Refer to my co-chair to add if I missed something, because I probably did.
No, you actually nailed it. And I think the icing on the cake around this is we are the template. We are setting direction. And when I tell people, and Tim says to folks, all eyes are on us, we're very serious, because no one across the whole of the US has done this level of work. And it's been 13 months. 13 months, almost 13,000 people we've engaged, whether they've been through meetings, surveys, town halls, in the grocery store. It doesn't matter. We have engaged folks, right? And the other piece for us too that's really important is, yes, there is a document, but we call it a living and fluid document. And that's what this is all about, capturing those things that are critical to this community, and enabling all boats to rise during this point in time. And that's what the federal government wanted. That's what the state of New York wanted. And that's what Micron wanted. How can we do all of this unbelievable life-altering work and not ensure that all boats can rise? So that's what this is about, at least. And we're setting the template.
So I'm so happy that we finally are, and I'm sorry that I didn't bring that out more clearly, or possibly it wasn't quite as clear, okay, when we had our first conversation. But as I started to look around the country at, as you said, like when Intel started their build out there in Ohio, I think it was, and NVIDIA, okay, down in Texas, that there, I couldn't find any evidence that there was any type of effort like this at all to engage the community so that all boats would rise, so that everyone had a voice, but not only a voice, that we had a platform that we all agreed upon. It's not that you're going to agree upon everything, but a platform for progress, to move forward for the next 20, 25, 30, 35 years, because the infrastructure and the loss of wealth within our communities did not happen overnight, and it's going to take much longer, the same length of time to build that back. All right, you said 13,000 interviews, Melanie?
Yep, I said 13,000, almost 13,000 residents were engaged in this process through various mechanisms, surveys, one-on-one meetings, small roundtable meetings, town halls, through online engagement. We did it all.
All right, then. So when you look at the trend lines in that 13,000 interviews, did we get a full spread of age categories? Do we have everybody there?
We do.
I believe we did. We went from high schools,
Right.
superintendents, with the city district, the surrounding suburban superintendents got together, brought their schools together. We established connections with colleges, the general adult population base all throughout central New York. Those that could and were interested and were willing to, and we brought the show to them as much as we could. I'm happy with the amount of people that were contacted. At 12,000, I think surpassed over 12,000. I think to be exact, it's like 12,734 or something. So
there's a man who counted each one, just in case we need to know.
But it exceeded what we thought we were going to be able to do, just because, you had to really be flexible as far as a committee and as far as your strategy. Because you could do a lot of things, but you could really miss a segment of the population.
Okay, all right, then. So, I know how surprised I was when I walked into ITC, I think it was about a year ago, and I saw all the different faces, all of the different demographics, all the different age groups, and was really, really surprised and happy to see that. All right, so we've got all of the information together. We've had all the interviews. Everything's been thrown into the pot. It's all stirred up now. Let's hear what we found out. What are the high points and what did we really learn?
None of it will be a surprise.
Okay.
None of it, right? That's what I thought, right?
Right.
Like,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point you make, that what we all came up with, because I put my 2 cents in there, is what we would expect it to be, right? So let's
hear it. Okay. What did we learn?
Educational resources and access. workforce exposure, development, and job opportunities, minority, women, veteran-owned business enterprises and small businesses needing assistance, housing. How about that?
Housing.
Community development and quality of place, community health and family supports. And up under each one of those large priority areas are, more detail. For example, in terms of the educational resources and providing access, strengthen the integration of STEAM, literacy and social and emotional support programming in K-8 educational system, create career and workforce readiness programs more aggressively in grades 8 through 12. And when you go through each one of those priority areas that have been identified, you're not going to be surprised. Small biz and minority women-owned, veteran-owned business enterprise actively enhance and support minority women and veteran-owned enterprises, strategically support and grow the small business support ecosystem. And up under all of those priorities are more of the how. And all of these priorities, many of us, we all weighed in. And this is, there won't be a lot of surprises, right, Tim? I really don't believe there are.
Before Tim weighs in, you had an acronym, and I want to be acronym free. This is an acronym free zone.
Okay.
So you said STEAM. Now I know we hear STEAM all the time, but what do we mean by that?
Right. Thank you for doing that. Science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
All right. Thank you.
Right?
Arts and math. Educated
that. Go right ahead, Tim. Okay. You were about to say?
Well, some things I think we all are aware of. And again, when I say we, I'm not going to say the whole population of New York is aware of it, but the reality is this effort, this impact, we found that we have some real developmental things we have to do. We have infrastructure issues that need to be addressed. And we've been thinking about 81 for so long and how that was going to impact. Now, with that being potentially a conduit to the semiconductor plant that's developing in Clay, but then also just how it's going to impact our city, housing. If you're talking about bringing that many new people here as a result of the Micron impact, we're talking about, we have a lot of things to do, and we have to do some of them rather quickly than others, just because they have to get done in order to make this a successful impact. And there's a lot of opportunity for everybody in it. So when you look at that priorities document, you'll see those priorities. Some of those are really going to need to be addressed as soon as possible. Some of them have already started. The governor's already put a significant amount of funding into some of the infrastructure areas, into some of the areas that it's not even a part of yet this document or this fund. So we're seeing it. We're seeing more companies come. It's just a matter of making sure we provide the pathways for the people to have the access to the opportunity.
All right. So you've said a couple of things that I want to make sure that we don't lose. First of all, we focused very much on Micron, but we have not spoken, I don't think, loudly enough on the fact that there are follow-on institutions that are following Micron here. In fact, I think what was about a month ago, county exec, mayor, Rob Simpson's, RDC, all went out to Taiwan?
Yep.
To have a conference. And then shortly afterward, there was a first announcement about a company coming in from Taiwan, because there are suppliers that are all connected to this system, which is why the numbers that we look at as far as how many jobs there are is not just Micron, it's a multiplier effect of everything that's going to happen there. The second thing was that you said, Tim, that I want to make sure we don't lose, and that is the fact that this is a priorities document. And I'm going to ask you the question, who sets the priorities? We have the priorities, but who prioritizes the priorities? Are they running at the same time? Are we in sequence? How does this happen?
Well, I think that's a great question. And the committee, by establishing the document with their priorities, has put them forth. There are some that we can already see. And again, when I say it, the funding principles, the state and Micron are making the decisions. So
Okay.
ultimately, they are the ones who, from those priorities, are going to be establishing and making the determination of what gets funded and what doesn't. So it's your question. They're going to really prioritize the priorities. But as a committee and as a community, we've kind of stated a number of them that I think are pretty clear. We have to get housing. We have to get small business and minority businesses engaged. We have to have infrastructure. Childcare clearly is an issue that's going to be connected to the workforce. Workforce development. I can't believe I didn't say that. That's one of my roles. Is needed. It's one of the, it's the win-win for all. Micron and those companies are going to need workers. We have a population that has not necessarily been able to engage in the workforce on equal basis as others. We have to be able to ensure there's pathways. We have to understand that there probably will be people coming from outside our community to establish and engage in some of that workforce. We have to have pathways for our own residents as well.
Vicki, I have a follow-up to that, and I want to know
ahead.
what the term workforce exposure. I haven't heard that term before. What do we mean by that?
Right.
Workforce exposure, development, and opportunities. And by the way, what I heard Melanie say earlier, all those lists, these are things that are supposed to happen immediately, right? These are the higher priority areas, from what I understand. So, what do we mean by workforce exposure?
Did I say workforce exposure?
Well, that's
That's in a document, right?
To make sure. I don't have a document in front of me right now to where it says workforce exposure. I always look at workforce exposure as making sure that individuals have access to the multiple levels of the employment opportunities that are going to come forth. And we got, going back to the statement on other companies, we have to keep those other companies in mind, because Micron is building the fab, but it's going to be staged. And those 9,000 aren't going to start the minute the fab is built. There's going to be multiple fabs built. So we're going to have to develop this ecosystem that we haven't had before of a workforce. And again, it started in K through 12. It's going to be established. There's coalitions of higher ed institutions that have already started the process for, the bachelor's degrees, associate's degrees. And we're also going to be looking at those workforce, I call them workforce development, those that don't necessarily need degrees, but just need to be certified to work inside the plants. And again, I say this because people just need to understand, at this stage right now, we will be having new residents of Central New York coming from multiple areas, just like we're seeing for 81 and other areas. And that's where the housing impact is going to need to be addressed. But as far as for me, and again, this is my role as the EOC director or vice president, is ensuring that we have opportunities and pathways for populations that have not been engaged and have been disadvantaged for years within our country, in our community.
And one of the things that we also think is critically important about this document that we can't underscore enough. Yes, Micron was the impetus for this document. But this document, this is everybody's responsibility. I don't want to hook this just to Micron, because then it becomes real easy for folk to sit on the sidelines and say, well, no, Micron's supposed to do that. Micron is, yes,
correct.
And they are supposed to do a ton of stuff in this document, but we all are. Every organization, every corporation, you are going to benefit from this document. This is the voice of the people, right? And here are the things we all need to know, whether it's industry agnostic. It is our guidepost. And every corporation should be knocking down our doors to say, what are the priorities? Everybody needs a workforce. Everybody needs a workforce that can reliably get to work, have childcare for their employees, and have a fully educated and engaged workforce. I don't know who doesn't want that or who doesn't
Or
need
exactly.
need it,
Okay.
right? And so that's this community priorities document. And we were real careful to keep calling it the Central New York Community Engagement Committee. Now, yes, much of it's going to be funded by the state of New York and Micron, but everybody needs to have skin in this game.
$500 million, right?
500, and look, that's a deposit.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so I keep hearing you saying that's the deposit. Has anyone quite figured out what the end number will approximate?
I don't think there-
Nope. I don't think there is an end number right now.
Okay.
Right. So just think about it. Can't we all, right, Tim? We can spend this $500 by end of this call.
Absolutely.
Right.
500.
Okay.
100 million.
Yeah.
Right.
So
500 million. Okay, she just went from 500 million to $5 because that's how small it is.
And it's-
think about when you think about the challenges that we're talking about.
Yes.
and the time frame,
Yes.
That's not a lot of money, but that's why you've seen the governor put money outside of it. I
Yeah.
mean, if you've been paying attention, that's not to you, but everybody should be thinking, look at the announcements, the tech hub announcement of I
40
think,
million.
2 days ago. Yeah.
40
40
million.
40 million.
And then the amount that Micron was awarded under CHIPS Act, I think was 3.1 billion.
6.91 billion.
Yes.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
Right.
$1 billion. And I already talked about what the difference between a billion and a million, they're different.
Lot of zero.
They're different. So when you think of that, not that the engagement committee or the CIF is the reason that those happen, but there's a lot of resources coming into our community, and they're all with the intent to make us competitive. And that's the thing I think Central New York needs to really be thinking about. We now are in competition with the NVIDIAs or the other communities that are in the semiconductor world to make ours the best. And that's where, I think Micron in some of our conversations like that idea that now they're a company that are enlisting the whole Central New York community as a team. And we have to be thinking that. And it really connects with all those things in the priorities document to make sure that everyone's involved, because that'll make us a better and more competitive region as far as semiconductor or whatever else might develop as a result of it.
All right. So this document, this community priorities document, the Central New York Community Priorities document, where can I find it?
You can find it online on the governor's website. You can also go to www.nyscec.org to get it, but you can go right to the governor's website and it is clearly there.
We'll have the link for them
We'll
right
have it
here
over
in
on
this video.
Okay.
Okay, but I want to make sure that everybody knows it's accessible. You don't
Yeah.
have to go to some secret hiding place or find some secret person to give you the hookup. It's accessible to everybody. And there's both a full document and a summary. Okay,
Yes.
in case you don't want to read the big one, the summary to get on board and to understand. I know George and I have been saying this for months. And my major concern is that we have not taken on that teamwork attitude yet. And this is the time for us to do so, because the document is ready and the priorities are being set and the funding for those priorities are being put in place, and participation, most of all, in the results and the process and is critically important at this point in time. All right, Melanie and Tim, before we close, there's got to be something that happened for you throughout the 13 weeks.
But before you do that,
excuse me.
before you do that,
Okay.
Vicki, before you do that, there's one more thing we gotta ask them.
What's that?
When can you get the money?
Oh, when can you get the money?
I was like, Vicki, wait a minute. You the money
Okay.
maven.
Tell
We
me
gotta
about
ask
the money. When can you get the money? Okay. And how do you get the money?
Thank you,
Okay.
Vicki.
All
Come
right,
on
all
now.
right. Let's go back.
Well, as we spoke, the whole process was creating the document. The document will then now inform for the CI, the Community Investment Fund. Sorry about the acronyms, but we've been living them for the last
Right.
That process will be released hopefully within the next 2 weeks.
Mm.
And when I say the process, just dates, times, the area, presentations that will be out in the community, because we're not just gonna just put it in the paper and just expect people to all of a sudden know how to go and get on the website, because there will be a website portal. We're gonna actually have meetings out there similar to what we did as the engagement committee to inform people what has occurred, how they can get involved. And as we all know, some of the people that can benefit, and when I say benefit us the most, us, in achieving our goals, need assistance in being able to do it.
Mm.
And it's very easy to say, okay, everybody has access to it, but the person that might be able to have the largest amount of impact, maybe for small people, but a large amount of impact, may not know how to, may not have the capabilities, and needs understanding. So we want to be able to do that in an orchestrated, strategic manner to make sure people understand how to engage.
One more quick follow-up on that, Tim and Melanie. And Melanie, you talked about this as a Central New York engagement document, right? Does this mean that all organizations throughout the community might look to this as a blueprint for other kinds of supports within the community? Like, this is what the community, or is this just limited to, okay, this is what the Community Investment Engagement Committee came up with and the 13,000 responses, and this is that piece, but there's some other things that like, in other words, will this become the blueprint for all kinds of funding and priorities and philanthropic priorities, do you think, in Central New York?
I think it will become the document that will fund some of the largest, biggest, most ominous priorities, right? Like we can't talk about workforce development without talking about housing, right? We can't talk about housing and more workforce development without talking about childcare, right? So there will be some real meaty issues that we got to dig into. Mm-hmm. But then, creating a sense of place, right? The arts and cultural community, right? There will still be opportunities for many other organizations to fund, support some of because that creates the fabric of, there will be plenty other opportunities that others will need to continue to seek funding for. But what we're trying to do is to put the right amount of resources behind these huge, huge issues to make a dent so that we can create long-term sustainable and resilient communities and people. So that's what this funding is about. But that will not get rid of other opportunities for funding.
Okay, all right. So to make sure that I got this right, we're still a couple of weeks away on the process as far as how to apply and get funding. All right. Two-step process. All right. So that means you got to come back in a month.
Yeah. We'll come back
and walk us through the process so that we have full information out there for everybody. Okay, now I'm going. George, you got it?
I got you. Now you can do your 13-week question.
Okay. All right. All right. So over the 13 months, lots of things were learned. You experienced a lot of things. Okay. You met a lot of lots of people. You had experiences with all types of individuals. What was your biggest surprise? And what was your biggest disappointment?
Ooh.
Wow, that's a good one. Biggest surprise was that the young people we engaged, everyone's talking about the lost generation or these young people not having voice and or opinions. No, they were great thoughts. They want adults to be held accountable for creating the kind of world that in community that they're proud of. They're real clear around what they want to see. And so they have voice, they have opinions, and they have passion. And so sometimes we don't lean into that voice more. So I was surprised with just the sheer level of opinions and thoughts that young people were very willing and not bashful to share.
Tim? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Melanie.
Nope. Let Tim go.
Biggest surprise? I'll come back to disappointment. Okay.
Okay, I think one of the things that I was surprised by this process was I'll be quick because I know we got a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
Getting engaged externally and seeing how Syracuse and Central New York was being perceived as a result of this. In that across the country, as Melanie said, the eyes are on us. And we may be surprised that there's a perception that we are very progressive as it pertains to these
Yes, there
areas.
is.
And I guess the surprise is both good and bad, is we know our community, we know, the things that we've been marked for years as it pertains to poverty, and particular individuals, people of color, condensed poverty rates, all of these things. And to see that as a backdrop, but then also see us being perceived as making a step in this direction, was both a surprise, but also was disappointed that a lot of these areas are not even thinking about that, knowing that they may have the same issues. They just may not have it in the way that we do. And it's still a little sobering to find that that's not even on their radar, some of them. So I went to the surprise and disappointment all in one. But George,
That's all good.
All right, Melanie, you want to add anything on the disappointment?
That's in some instances, we are still grappling with the question, is Micron coming? Right. And, we need folks to know it is as real as it's gonna get. And if we're not dialing in, we're dialing out. So
Love
Yep.
it. Okay. We're not dialing in, we're dialing out. Okay. I've seen the instances and examples of exactly what both of you are talking about. First of all, Tim, CNBC, all of you probably know what CNBC is. And there's a commentator there, Jim Cramer, the loudest guy on TV. Okay. And he was talking about Syracuse last week. And the fact that, Syracuse, is doing something, and I heard it and I went, oh my God, guys, you're getting ready to get run over, because when the information starts coming out at that level, it's no longer a secret. Okay? We had some lead time availability this last 13 months to get entrenched and get grounded and get roots built in, and now we're going to be in a race. Yep. Believe me, we're going to be in a race in the competition from others who are coming in. So, and then this, is it really going to happen? Is this real? I don't believe this. I want to beat my head against the wall. Like the same thing, like, did we ever land on the moon? Right. Conversation, okay, that we see at times. Okay, still talking about the moon, the spacewalk. I thank the two of you very much for taking the time out of your day, because I know it's hard to break away, to be with us here this morning, and time away from families and so forth. But we really appreciate the fact that you're walking us through very systematically exactly what's going on, so that the information is very clear and accessible to everyone here in this community. I also want to thank you for taking the 13 months, because that could not have been easy. And I know that the governor didn't let you go because you told me you'd be back in 2 weeks.
We'll be back.
We'll be back. Okay. So again, thank you on behalf of the community for doing that for us. Again, Ms. Melanie Littlejohn and Mr. Tim Penix, who are co-chairs of the Community Priorities Initiative here in Central New York. And Mr. Kilpatrick, I'm going to say to everyone, if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call at area code 315-930-4499 or reach out to us, share, subscribe, and comment to this podcast. And at this point in time, we will say our plate is definitely full.
All right, Vicki Brackens is the president of Brackens Financial Solutions Network, LLC, and the registered representative of LPL Financial, member SIPC. She is America's money maven.